There are a total of 30 different character-specific perks out there, and some of them can be the most important perks to run on your character, and others are honestly just not worth running at all. Now, there are multiple ways you can get these character-specific relic perks. Most of these can be acquired by doing the character quest lines. There are a bunch that you can grab off the collector signboard, but for the most part, you're going to get these off randomized relics, and do keep in mind they can only spawn on the top row for every single relic. And also, none of these relics do stack at all. So having multiple of the same relic perks that I'm going to mention in this video is not going to do anything for you. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and rank all of these relic perks from worst to best, put them in a tier list, and I am going to try and base this list off both solo play and multiplayer as well. Now, starting off at the bottom, we have the improved Poise near Totem STELA perk. Now, this is not technically a character-specific relic perk, as you can equip it onto any character and benefit, but the perk is still directly tied to the Raider ultimate attack, so I might as well just include it onto the list. But all this does do is just improve your poise by about 50% if you are standing near the totem, which honestly isn't that great. Like, it's not going to give you hardness and actually tank attacks that would otherwise knock you to the ground. It's just going to be a bit of a poise increase, which against most like Night Lord bosses or larger bosses in general, it's not going to mean anything at all. Like, this would have been infinitely more useful if it was like a damage negation boost instead. And that probably shouldn't even been a relic perk. They should actually come just passive alongside the ultimate attack to begin with. Number 29, we have the Duchess perk that gives you some more stealth after getting a backstab. Now, it can be a backstab on either just getting the stance break and then backstabbing a boss, or just like a random trash mob. But trying to get a stance break with someone like the Duchess isn't going to be the most realistic thing. And for the most part, if you are just backstabbing enemies and trash mobs, you're not really going to be at much threat at all. And also, the stealth that you actually gain off this relic is not going to be anywhere near as good as the invisibility that you gain off your ultimate art, or the relic perk that turns you invisible by proccing frost. Those are going to be so much better because they actually break enemy aggro in the middle of the fight. When enemies are aggro towards you and you get a backstab with this relic perk, they're still going to actually see you and potentially hit you. Number 28, we have the Iron Eye perk that boosts your thrusting counterattack after using your ultimate art, which this is going to give you a 20% damage boost to your thrusting counterattacks for 30 seconds afterwards, which is still okay. It is going to be like a bit more damage sometimes, specifically if you are using some poking attack types of weapons like a bow or a spear thrusting sword. But if you are using things like katanas or straight swords, for the most part, you're not going to really see much use out of it. Which, if you don't know, a thrusting counterattack is if you hit an enemy in the middle of an attack combo with piercing damage. And depending on the enemy will be like depending on how big that window is. So for instance, if you are spamming like a bow and arrow, which does do piercing damage, you might notice that 10% of the time you're just doing a bit more damage than you otherwise normally would, which might end up being like a couple of attacks in those 30 seconds. So you're not going to really notice the difference at all when using this particular relic, especially if you are playing melee Iron Eye, which I have been preferring a lot more recently. Number 27, we have the Executor perk that gives your character skill a 10% damage boost, but every time you land an attack, it drains 10 HP. Which, for as long as this character skill is as weak as it is, I'm never going to really value these like character skill boosting relics. Because for a reference, with this relic equipped, and at level 15, his cursed sword katana is going to be doing less damage than like a random blue katana that he picks up, and that one would actually get bleed as well. Number 26, we have the Revenant perk, which upon using your ultimate attack, drains half your health, but it does fully heal nearby allies. Which this is not that good for multiple reasons. One of the reasons being is that her ultimate ability already does keep her allies alive and just prevent them from just dying or receiving any types of death blows. And two, obviously it drains her health, so you're only really going to want to use something like this when you are in multiplayer and when you are already at low HP. Which that's inherently going to make it a lot more restrictive. Like, a lot of Revenant mains already hold onto their ultimate for the entire game, just for those specific instances to revive their allies, and even then, when you are reviving your allies, they don't even benefit off that heal boost. At 25, we have Recluse's activating ultimate art raises max HP, which this is a 30% HP increase for 30 seconds. Which is pretty decent. It's not too bad. Unfortunately, it doesn't like fully heal your health bar. You are going to have to regenerate your health by yourself by either using your healing flask or hitting enemies while your art is active. And also, it's still only going to be a percentage increase, which for a reference, at max level, with this particular perk active, she still has less health than the Executor. And having it only last 30 seconds doesn't really do much for me either. Like, there are much more important things for the Recluse to run when it comes to damage boosting stuff. That a little bit more HP for a small amount of time, especially being that it's a percentage-based increase, it's not going to make me want to run it. Number 24, we have the other Executor-based perk that boosts its character skill. This one actually giving you health back every single time you activate Cursed Sword, which you activate by just getting a handful of deflects beforehand. And it will give you a flat 100 HP every single time that you activate it, which can be very good early game. It can pretty much just mean like having an extra healing flask. But once you get later into the game, it's going to only end up being like around about 10% of your health back. I kind of wish this perk was like percentage-based healing every single time. Like a 25 or like 50% based heal every time it activated. That way it probably could get a lot more use, because the way that I actually use the character skill right now is I only really use it for like the deflecting portion and not really for like the damage of it. So it still can be nice to have some like passive HP regen, but it's still not enough to warrant using, especially in the state that the character skill is actually in. Number 23, we have another Totem STELA specific perk, which yes, it is not specific to the Raider, but in most cases, if you are going to run this perk, it is going to be with the Raider, because when you are standing nearby the Totem STELA, it does give you 20% of your health back for every single kill. Which yes, in most cases where you are using this skill, it is going to be like in a 1v1 boss fight, because you just want to benefit off that more damage and the damage boost that the Totem actually gives you as well. So getting health regen in these boss fights, pretty much useless, but there are going to be circumstances to where you would want to use it. One is going to be against those like gank Everjail bosses. Also before the end of day bosses could be pretty cool. Also, some of the end of day bosses can be gank fights themselves, like the worm face or the demi-humans. Like, there are some circumstances to where it can get some pretty decent play. But once again, I feel like some of these perks that are specific to the Totem STELA could have just been a part of the ultimate attack itself and not really have to equip these relic perks just to be able to gain the benefit. At 22, we have the Duchess Dagger Chain Attack reprises event upon enemies. Now, what this actually means is the final light attack in your dagger attack combo does just give you a free restage effect, which is like your character skill. Now, it's not going to be as good as like regular restage. That one is going to reprise 50% of the damage, and if you have the specific perk, then it's 60%. But no matter what, with this specific perk, it's always going to be 40% of the damage. And also to keep in mind, restage don't actually stack. So this one can actually override your other restage depending on when you use it, and it is just going to be an inherent downside. But the fact that it still can be a free restage, it can just be some like passive damage over the top of what your allies are doing as well as yourself, can be pretty decent. But I think the biggest drawback for me is that it's tied to the dagger combo, and you have to get to that last light attack, which for one, it is pretty rare that you actually end up getting to the last light attack, especially in solo play. And even if you do, for the most part, it doesn't really feel like it's worth it unless you're using like some status effect types of weapons, like a cold infused Wakizashi or like a Reduvia can be pretty decent. But with how well the Duchess performs with spells, things like Carrion Slicer or Shattering Crystal, those are going to perform way better than you ever could while using daggers. Now, getting into the B tier at number 21, we have the Wilder Art gauge is greatly filled when the ability is activated. Now, what this means is that when your passive ability is consumed, so when you prevent yourself from taking a death blow, it will fill up roughly 20% of your ultimate art gauge. Which the amount of times where this thing actually does come up isn't going to be that often, but it definitely can come in clutch in lots of different boss fights, and if you are confident enough in your own play, then you could purposefully just take damage and lose your passive ability just to be able to get your ultimates back faster, which the Wilder ultimate is extremely powerful. So although it can be pretty decent, I do consider it to be the weakest of all like the Wilder character specific relics, and I only really would run it if I had it in combination with other really powerful perks. Number 20, we have a Duchess perk that gives you a damage boost every single time you get a kill while your art is active. And this is a 15% damage boost that lasts 30 seconds. And this buff can stack, you can just keep going as high as you want to, but do keep in mind every single time that you get a kill, it starts its own individual timer. And also the ultimate art only lasts 15 seconds. So realistically, you're only going to really end up having like that 15% more damage for like 30 seconds after your art is actually finished. And that is assuming that you got a kill. So when you are fighting those 1v1 boss fights, it's very much useless. And it's only really going to get some play when you're clearing out gank Everjails, going through camps or ruins. It definitely can be very nice before like the end of day boss if you find like a bunch of different trash mobs. but by the time that the boss actually spawns in, you're probably only getting like 15% more damage for like 10 seconds. And also to mention, it's very much useless against every single Night Lord boss except for a couple. Number 19, we have the Iron Eye Art Charge Activation adds Poison Effect, which this actually does add 300 poison buildup to your art arrow. Now do keep in mind it has to be fully charged, which can be pretty limiting. Sometimes you want to be able to like quickly get your attack out and use the art uncharged, which if you don't know, having it fully charged or not doesn't affect the damage. And another thing to keep in mind, you can only proc poison if you hit an enemy with the arrow directly. The Iron Eye ultimate attack actually has like an after shockwave effect and like this big AoE. And if you hit with the AoE portion of the ultimate, those enemies are not going to get procced with poison at all. But being that poison does do percentage damage, you're definitely going to benefit more of like using it against like larger single targets, which you're probably not going to miss either way. Number 18, we have an extended duration to the Totem Stellar ultimate art, which is from the Raider. Now, for the most part, when you're looking at this ultimate, it can just be a big downside because it just puts like a big giant pillar that's blocking your way and your teammates' way. And I'm pretty sure everybody has stories where this thing has just been like a downside more than it has been a positive. But one thing that the Raider ultimate art is actually good for is a damage boost. You and your allies do gain a 15% weapon damage boost that lasts roughly around about 30 seconds. And when you have this specific relic perk active, it actually does increase the duration of not only the totem by 10 seconds, but it actually increases the duration of the buff by 15 seconds, which I think that's going to end up outweighing the downsides of it like just blocking your way, which if you are a person that plays the Raider a lot, don't really bother using it directly on top of the boss. Just like use the ultimate art just further away so you and your allies can benefit of a damage boost, because the damage of the ultimate art itself is not really that good anyway. Number 17, we have the Iron Eye Mark weak point duration just be extended from 17 seconds to 20 seconds, which is obviously not going to be much, hence this being into the B tier and not any higher, but it definitely still can come in clutch sometimes, because I'm sure that I can speak for most people when I say that there's been plenty of times where I've used the Iron Eye Mark and it's about to break, but then like the mark goes away beforehand. And if I just had the extended duration, it would have helped me out a lot. So if you can get this perk alongside some other good stuff, then it definitely is worth running. Now getting into the A tier, at this point, all these skills are just going to be really good. You can like run them no matter what, even if they come in combination with some like mid perks. But yeah, number 16, we have the Guardian skill increased duration. So instead of its skill just having this like one big wind attack, it is going to be a continuous whirlwind, which it is going to make it do a bit more damage, but it's still not going to be that much more damage to where it's like worth using against a boss in most cases. It's only really going to get the play when you are fighting enemies that can be staggered, that actually have a decent amount of health. So fighting enemies like Beastmen or Banished Knights, you can just like completely immobilize them for about 5 seconds and just continuously hit them throughout that period. It can also pair very nicely alongside stamina recovers on hits, which I always recommend running that when playing with the Guardian. And being that character skills don't consume any stamina, this is just only going to be a net positive when it does come to stamina recovery. It can also prevent enemies from like recovering their stance as well, but when you're playing in multiplayer, or if you are using the relic ability that gives your shield an AoE when blocking, it's not going to really come up that often. Number 15, we are going to stay with the Guardian and go with the perk that does give you and your allies HP when using your ultimate art and having it fully charged, which this perk is probably going to be the most important one for the Guardian when you are playing in a team, because with how poor the Guardian's damage can be and with how unreliable getting guard counters are in multiplayer, just going all into a support role is definitely going to be the play. And your ultimate can be extremely good for that because it not only does revive your allies, but having it fully charged is going to give them damage negation and with this perk, some health regen. And being that reviving your allies puts them at 50% health, you can effectively just heal them back up to full from being dead. Now do keep in mind that this is actually going to drain your ultimate's charge, because every single time that you use your Guardian ultimate, it always leaves you at about like 20 to 25% of your ultimate charge left, which when I am in solo play, I like never fully charge it because I just want to get my ultimate back as fast as possible. So there is going to be a bit of a downside there, but like almost any single time when you're playing the Guardian in trios, I would definitely have this perk on. Number 14, we have another HP regen relic, but this one is for the Executor and his ultimate attack. And every single time that you do a roar, it does give you and your allies 15% of their health back, which is honestly kind of absurd, because not only does its raw attack go incredibly far, but it's great at stun locking, it actually has an AoE that surrounds the character as well, and it also is pretty quick, and getting 15% of your health back every single hit to you and your allies can just be amazing for survivability, and it can definitely clutch up some games if your teams are struggling. I'm only going to really care to run it when I am in teams, because in solo play, I don't really care for this at all. Because like 90% of the time that I'm using the Executor ultimate, I'm just popping the ult and then like immediately using the skill and then removing the ult straight away. Because that way it actually leaves me with a bunch of ultimate charge left. And being that I'm using a katana with lots of status effects, I'm going to be doing more damage than the ultimate art would anyway. And the only times that I'm really like roaming around in the ultimate is if I'm like stun locking like a bunch of trash mobs or Evergel bosses. And in that instance, I don't need the health regen anyway because they're just not a threat to me. Number 13, we have the Recluse perk that does give you a 15% damage boost when using your ultimate attack, but in return you do suffer from blood loss, which is going to drain your health by 20%. Now this is definitely going to be a very fine trade-off, because 20% health loss is definitely not much, especially due to how small the Recluse's health is already. And also it's going to be directly after using your ultimate attack, which you can just hit enemies to just get all that health back anyway. And another thing about the ultimate is that it does actually debuff enemies to make them take 15% more damage. So in this opening, you want to be able to have as many buffs active as possible because they're all going to stack together. And you could just use it as an opening to just use all your hardest hitting spells and just destroy bosses. And also another thing to note is that this perk can also just proc the buffs of those damage boosting things when proccing bleed in a nearby vicinity. And this can be acquired off boss drops. You can get it off the Lord of Blood Exaltation Talisman, and it also is off the passive ability of the Mogwin Sacred Spear. And it doesn't even have to be you that has these things equipped. Being that these perks give you a damage boost when the blood is in a vicinity, if your allies have these perks equipped and you pop your ultimate attack, they will get a damage boost too. Number 12, we have the Wilder Fire attack after the character's skill. Now, people are probably going to be surprised why this one is not going to be higher, and it is for a bunch of different reasons, but it obviously still is very good, hence it being into the A tier. The skill can cover a lot of ground really quickly. It does do more damage than like a jumping heavy attack, and being that it is tied to your skill, it's also not going to consume any stamina, and then it just does buff your greatswords with just a bit more damage too. Now, this fire damage boost is not going to be as much as like Fire Grease or if you were to use Flaming Strike, but you can't really go wrong with this free damage. Now, when it does come to the downsides of this particular relic, the major one being is that it's tied to the greatswords. And when you are playing the Wilder, you pretty much have like almost any weapon in the game available to you. 99% of the weapons in the game just scale best of strength and dexterity, and the Wilder just gets a really good scaling in both of those stats. So when I'm playing this character, I'm just going to use the best weapon available no matter what. It could be like a Raptor Talons, it could be like the Godslayer's Greatsword, it could even be something like the Hand of Millennia. So when I do end up finding there's like really good weapons that aren't greatswords, then this perk is pretty much useless. And also another thing to note when you are playing in teams, a lot of people are going around proccing Frost. And Frost is an amazing debuff because it makes enemies take more damage, and other people have relics out there that let them do more damage to frostbited enemies. And using something like this could just like immediately remove the frostbite. And that definitely can be a pain in the ass for a lot of different teams. Number 11, we have the Recluse giving you TERRA Magicka every single time that you just absorb an infinity. Now, it's technically not going to be every single time, like the TERRA Magicka has to just go away before it's allowed to be activated again. But the fact that you can pretty much always just have a TERRA Magicka activated at all times is amazing, because it is going to give you just 15% more damage to your magic-based sources, assuming you are standing inside of the magic sigil. Which, if you are playing in teams and you have lots of like ranged-based attacks, this is definitely not going to be that hard of a task. Now, there's still going to be plenty of circumstances to where like you're going to have to like run around and stuff, and you can't really stand inside of the pool. And that's going to be the main reason why I'm not going to put this any higher. And also because that is only going to boost your magic-based attacks. The Recluse also gets an S scaling in Faith. And against some bosses, maybe you want to have some like fire-based attacks or holy-based attacks. But for the most part, being that you're more likely to find staves, it's just always going to be magic damage. And with how powerful things like Shattering Crystal and Stars of Ruin are, this is pretty much like a must-have. Number 10, we have the Revenant's power up while fighting alongside family. Now, this does multiple different things. It's just dependent on like which Spirit Ash that you summon. If you do summon Helen, she is going to give you 1 HP health regen per second. If you summon Sebastian, he is going to give you a 20% elemental damage negation boost. And summoning Frederick is going to give you a 10% damage boost to all of your sources. And that is going to be the biggest reason why this thing makes it to the top 10, is because Frederick is your best summon based on things like just having decent health, maneuverability, and some good damage. So you're pretty much going to have him summoned all the time, and you can pretty much just always have a 10% damage boost at all times. Now, once you end up getting to like the final Night Lord fight, your spirit summons are going to die very quickly. So it's not like you're really going to always have that 10% more damage, but you know, you can just cycle between all of your other spirit ashes and at least benefit of some type of perk. So albeit it's not going to be the most consistent thing in the world, it still feels very good to run. Number 9, we're going to stay on the Revenant, and we're going to go with the GHOSTFLAME explosion upon using the ultimate attack, which this just allows your ultimate attack to just do damage as well, which the ultimate attack already did like a plethora of different things already. So just being able to just give it a relic perk that just allows it to do damage and actually do more damage than things like the Raider ultimate and the Guardian ultimate is honestly kind of insane. Now, unfortunately, it's not going to be able to like stagger Night Lord bosses the same way that those ultimate attacks would, but it's having like some really nice and quick AoE damage is never going to be a bad thing. Number 8, we have the Guardian creates Whirlwind when charging halberd attacks. This relic perk I didn't really rate that high a long time ago, but after running it a whole bunch, I think this thing is honestly amazing, and it's like almost a must-have for the Guardian. Like, he has so many relic perks that he relies on to just be like good, that is kind of like a little bit annoying. Like, there's some good things that you have to sacrifice every single time that you make a Guardian build. But being able to create a Whirlwind with your halberd charged heavy attack is fantastic, because one, your halberd charged heavy attacks aren't really the quickest thing in the world, nor do they output much stance damage, especially when two-handed. Being that it has like a really long animation, it's going to take a while to proc a stance break, because a halberd charged heavy attack does like just as much stance damage as a straight sword charged heavy. But with this added whirlwind effect, not only is it going to make it do a lot more damage, but it's also going to make it do roughly just as much stance damage as like a colossal sword. And being that you are going to use your halberd one-handed for the most part, because when you have your shield in your offhand, the heavy attack speeds are going to be a lot faster. And it's not like it's just going to be some bonus damage. It like actually serves as like a ranged-based AoE that is going to stun lock enemies more effectively. And if you have the stamina recovery on hits, it's pretty much just going to give you just a bit more stamina back too. Now, the only downside is that it's only going to be for the halberds, which, as I mentioned, for the Wilder and the Greatsword fire attack skill, it can be pretty limiting. But when you are playing the Guardian, you're pretty much going to be using a halberd throughout the majority of the playthrough, because you can only fully charge the guard cannon with the halberd. So although he can use multiple different types of weapons, it's not really like the Guardian to where you kind of just want to use the best weapon available. Like, you still definitely want to have a halberd equipped at all times for those guard cannons, and definitely for this charged heavy attack. Number 7, we have the Wilder +1 character skill use. Now, the Wilder character skill doesn't seem like the most amazing thing in the world. Like, it's just a grapple hook that can just take you from A to B a bit faster. But being able to go from A to B a bit faster and just like cover some more distance pretty much means everything in this game. And having like a second grapple hook just feels so nice, because going from point of interest to point of interest, or going from boss to boss just a lot faster, means that you can just get more runes, you can get more loot, and just be a lot more powerful at the end of the day than you otherwise normally would. And it even comes in handy when fighting like these bosses that have really large AoE attacks. Sometimes you're just not going to have enough stamina to run away, but the grapple hook is always going to be there. Like, almost every single character skill in the game has like very specific uses, or just feels a bit niche. But the Wilder grapple hook is pretty much good all the time, so you can never go wrong with having a second charge. Number 6, we have Revenant strengthens family and allies when ultimate art is activated. This is by far the most important relic to run when playing the Revenant, specifically when you are in trios. It can be still good in solos as well, because every single time that you pop your ultimate, it actually forces your spirit summons to use like a very powerful attack. And with this relic perk activated, it's just going to make that attack just do 25% more damage. But when you are playing in trios, this thing is just incredible. Any single time you get your ult, just pop it straight away. If you have it in combination with GHOSTFLAME explosion, even better, because it just allows your teammates to just do so much more damage. And having it last 30 seconds is more than enough as well. Like, one of the most broken runs that I've ever had was actually playing with 3 Revenants, all running this perk, and is continuously having the ultimates up all the time. We just always had a 25% damage boost. We were basically always unkillable. Like, if you haven't already done this, go play triple Revenant with this perk and you will see how broken it is. Okay, now moving on into the S tier at number 5, we have the Wilder perk. Art activation spreads fire and area. This thing just boosts his ultimate art to just have him just spawn in a big fire-based AoE, and this pretty much just like effectively doubles the damage of the ultimate art. Like that's how much damage this extra fire bit actually does, and if you end up finding some perks like increased affinity damage boosting, or starting off with some fire-based perk relics, this is just only going to make it do more damage. Now, the only downside of this perk is that it's going to have to involve the enemies standing inside the fire AoE the entire time. But the thing is, with the Wilder ultimate art, it does so much stance damage that it's pretty much going to stagger every single enemy in boss in just that one hit. And when they do get stance broken, they're pretty much immobilized, vulnerable for a critical attack, and they're very much going to take that entire damage of that fire-based AoE anyway. Number 4, we have the Raider. Damage taken when using the ultimate skill improves the attack power and stamina. So when you do take damage throughout the character skill, it is going to give you a 10% damage boost and a 20% stamina boost for 20 whole seconds. Like, this is definitely the best perk to run with the Raider, because this character skill already gets so much damage negation and hyper armor that you can pretty much just see this as a free damage boost and a free stamina boost. And the fact that it has a 20-second buff and the skill cooldown is only 12 seconds, you can very much have this buff active at all times. And also the fact that this perk just synergizes perfectly with one of the best relics in the game, and taking attacks improves attack power, just only makes this even better. Like, the only downside that I can say about it is that sometimes you try to time the attack to actually trade out with a boss, and then sometimes like the boss just misses you or you just mistime it. Then you gotta wait like another 12 seconds just to gain that damage boost. That's basically like the only downside, but like, yeah, other than that, it's pretty much S tier. Number 3, we have the Guardian. Reflect a portion of damage received when the ability is activated. Now, I don't think there is a single relic ability that is more important to a particular character than this one is. If the Guardian didn't have this relic perk, he would be a lot worse. Like, if you take the other relic perks away from the other characters, they might be a little bit worse, but not this big of a discrepancy. Like, that's how powerful this one particular ability is. Because not only is it just going to do passive damage to an enemy every single time that you block, but it's also going to stop them from regenerating their stance. It's also just going to end up doing this more stance damage on top of that. It's going to synergize perfectly with stamina recovery on hits. And it also is incredible at stun locking enemies too. Any single time that you fight like a Banished Knight or a Lion, or any type of smaller enemy that you can stagger pretty easily, this particular perk just cheeses every single one of them. It is by far the best perk for the Guardian, and honestly, I would have liked to put it at number 1 if like the shield or blocking based playstyle wasn't like so poor in trios. Because sometimes it can be pretty inconsistent in actually having enemies hit you and your shield. And that's basically the only reason why I didn't put this at number 1. Number 2, we have the Duchess improved character skill attack power, which this just buffs the restage skill for free, which restage is already one of the best character skills in the entire game because it just allows you to just do bonus damage. It basically makes enemies take like the last few seconds of damage all over again, or like roughly 50% of that damage. But with this relic perk equipped, it's actually going to be 60% of that damage. So it's effectively 20% more restage damage just by having this one skill. And the skill is like easy to use. It doesn't require actually having an animation. As long as you're close to an enemy that is going to be taking a whole bunch more damage, they're going to take more stance damage. It can like proc the status effect all over again. It can proc status effects faster. Like, I don't really care for any of the other Duchess specific perks out there, but this one is just so good that you have to have it equipped, paired alongside some other spell-based boosting stuff, Hoarfrost Stomp, and you have yourself a broken build. And at number 1, I'm going to go with the +1 skill used to the Iron Eye. I think the Iron Eye Mark skill is the best skill in the entire game. And the fact that you can just get an additional charge is kind of just silly. Because the skill not only serves as like a ridiculous iframe dodge, like it just covers so much distance and just gives you lots of iframes, but it also damages enemies, it staggers smaller ones, and it leaves a debuff that makes enemies take 10% more damage for the 17 seconds that it's active. But when you do enough damage to this debuffed enemy, the mark will actually break and they will just take a whole chunk of damage, also get staggered the same way that ultimate attacks will actually stagger Night Lord bosses, and just do a whole bunch of stance damage too. And as having a second charge is just obviously better for survivability. It can just allow you to just keep the mark active on a boss at all times. There's plenty of times that you end up just like missing your mark, and just having this second charge just definitely comes in clutch. It can actually just help you effectively mark multiple enemies too. Like with the Iron Eye, there aren't really many perks out there that definitely help him out a whole bunch, especially if you're playing melee-based Iron Eye. But doesn't matter what type of Iron Eye build that you run, +1 character skill use is the first thing that you equip. Okay, we are done with that ranking list. As always, let me know what your opinions are down in the comments below. We'll be making lots more Nightreign content coming along the way because there is going to be that new update that releases next week. So if those things do interest you, definitely do like and subscribe, and do follow me on Twitch also, because I'm live there pretty much every day just doing a bunch of random challenge runs or just playing the game casually. Anyway, catch you guys around. See yous.